I mean, Judaism has Sinai. Am I correct? There's witnesses. Christianity has the resurrection.
I don't know if those are good. I mean,
I
I've
mean,
heard that. I think it's called the Lawrence Kellerman argument,
right, right.
or
The
the
Lord,
Kuzari argument. You know, Kuzari also brings on the argument that in some way you can't fake Sinai.
In the New Testament, when Jesus died and resurrected, they said that there were 50 witnesses there. That saw
500.
500,
500. Yeah.
right? So I mean, why is that fake? Right now, yes, 2 million
And
total on
plus
Mount
that
Sinai.
the kever is empty.
Yeah, well, we don't even know where the kever is. I mean,
And it says when the prophet ascended into heaven, they said there were many witnesses there who saw him do it on the Al-Aqsa
yeah,
Mosque.
yeah,
Well, does George
Neve.
Washington exist then? Did he
The
exist?
idea of George Washington existing is not a supernatural idea, right? Saying that God appeared in front of 2 million people is. So that's why it's a little,
Well, no, isn't it about witnesses and people just like Jesus? Jesus didn't write the new Bible. I mean, the New Testament. It's all witnesses, eyewitnesses who
But you could make the
experienced.
argument for every religion, though.
I mean, listen, it's something. It's one thing to a revelation in Mount Sinai is not that easy to. Uh, you know what I'm saying?
Well, it is. I mean, if it's 3,000 years ago, that's the thing. There's belief systems that are less than heck. I mean, less than 1,000 years old. That it could say 2 million people saw this or 1,000 people saw that, but 250 years, 500 years down the road, who's going to testify to that? I mean, they're like, "Were you there?" It's like the notion of the Zohar. They believe.
And you're questioning the father to son scenario of not being.
So the average person who walks around claiming to be a genetic Jew nowadays, it doesn't have a father to son relationship to Mount Sinai. I think the vast majority of people who call themselves Jewish nowadays are descended from converts. As a matter of fact, in the Ashkenazi world, there's a family, the Katzenallenbogen, family, that they say that virtually all Ashkenazim living today, almost all of them come from this man.
You know the Professor Kelman that you mentioned?
Yeah.
The theory. He's a professor in UCLA. He
I
actually.
Okay, go ahead.
He
did taught in Neve in Yerushalayim.
He actually went back and supposedly went back all the way to Sinai in terms of his generation with a backup of two independent sources.
Okay.
So
I mean, I don't believe it, by the way, because what they typically do, they'll say they're related to a specific rabbi. I mean, this is how the Lubavitcher Rebbe did it, and this is how most modern day Gedolim, when they say that they're descended of David HaMelech, let's say, they'll try to make a connection to the Rambam, and the Rambam claims to be a descendant of David. Of course, we can't prove it, but he himself might have names that I guess that we'll have to take his word for it, and that's how they link it back. But it's not that they have a record going back of an uncle here. It's nonsense.
What about that gene about the Kohanim in DNA?
The Cohen gene, I don't know, if that proves much. I mean, it means that there is a priestly tribe, but to say that, here, look, even the Torah, as we have it today, okay, and I don't know if this is very heretical, but I think it's very sensical to believe this, is not the exact Torah they had back then. Clearly not, because in the Torah, it talks about them reading the Torah every, I believe, 7 years during Hakel. So how can you read the Torah if the narrative of the Torah wasn't complete? It's because the Torah back then was what Torah is. Torah is a book of instructions, an actual Sefer HaMitzvot, not all the narratives of Bereshis and all the bells and whistles. Okay, I know that in faith, I mean, it's one of the 13 principles of the Rambam, right? And in Yigdal, we say it all the time, that we believe that the same Torah that we have today is the same Torah they had back then. The Rambam contradicts himself when he says, well, the closest version of the Torah is the Aleppo Codex, which means that that's technically what we use, but he says that's the closest version, meaning that it's not the same one from Mount Sinai. So it seems like, well, also, when he wrote the 13 principles, he was very young. And then later on, it seems like he may have matured because he did change his outlook on certain things. But we first have to be honest, okay? That we first have to be honest with what things that are more probable than just trying to be liked in the Jewish world and saying, yeah, I believe exactly what every modern day rabbi believes. And I mean, that's one thing I like to ask these YouTube rabbis: is there any opinion that they take an issue with, any accepted opinion in the Jewish world that they really take an issue with? Because they don't. Because first they look around and they see what's accepted, and then they formulate their ideas on that, and they're proud of that. They're like, I don't have any ideas. I go by what my rabbi said. But it sounds silly when people talk like that. We have to use our brain and be honest with the text. Look, I mean, as rational as I am, I'm still a six-day creationist. I think I give over the purest rendition of how halakha actually functions, because most people will say, just believe everything was given on Mount Sinai. So it shows that I haven't checked my brains at the door, but this is actually closer to what appears in the Talmud than those who claim to be such faithful students and not cross the line, because they'll teach Judaism in a way that they won't disagree with any Rishon, saying that they're all right. But it's our job to sort of harmonize them. These people lived at different times. They themselves contradicted other Rishonim. There's something wrong with saying that someone could be wrong.
What about the Jews in Mitzrayim?